Well, and some good news for the property market. New figures show the recovery is gathering momentum. For the start of spring, the national housing values saw a boost of 0.9%, marking the largest monthly gain since March of 2017. So to discuss this progress, I'm joined by Kevin Brogan from CoreLogic. Kevin, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us as always. So how do you explain that rise?
Oh, look, we've seen a number of indicators in the market that have expressed a sort of confidence that's returning. Obviously, the auction clearance rates, but as you mentioned, the increase in values. It's been particularly strong in Sydney and Melbourne. Each of those cities returning a 1.7% growth in dwelling values for the month of September.
So is this anything out of the ordinary, or is this just part of the usual cycle?
Oh, look, this is definitely a sort of recovery phase. We saw some really quite soft market conditions through 2018, which were linked to the lack of availability of mortgage finance and housing credit. Since the federal election, we've seen an improvement in confidence, which is related obviously to interest rate cuts, the certainty around negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions for investors. And these have all fed through into the market, and they're now manifesting in increasing prices, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, as I said. But in some other markets, it's showing a sort of firming up of prices, if not an increase.
Well, you just referred to the rate cut there. Of course, we had one this week that wasn't entirely passed on by the banks, but half of it was there. How much of a difference do you expect that to make?
Oh, look, it's likely to have a mild stimulatory effect, because obviously it's going to have an impact on the serviceability to individual property owners when they apply for a mortgage. But it is now at a situation where further cuts in a really low interest rate environment probably have a slightly muted effect. Interesting to see Tom there talking about retail consumption. Obviously, with house purchases, there is traditionally a surge in retail spending in relation to, for example, white goods and home furnishings. So, as Tom said, it'd be really interesting to see those figures if they come through.
Yeah, I guess it stands to reason. People go and buy a house and then they need stuff to fill it, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the way they're hoping it's going to work, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because generally speaking, retail-wise, I would have thought that people are swimming in debt once they get themselves a house, so they can't afford anything else.
Oh, look, and that's certainly something that's been in the news. Obviously, there was the recent Westpac case where there was a discussion about serviceability measures undertaken by mortgage lenders, and then the ability of individual owners to adapt their expenditure patterns to reflect the additional responsibility of mortgage repayments.
Just finally, Kevin, how much do you expect prices to increase in Sydney and Melbourne? Sorry, prices of values rise in Sydney and Melbourne in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, look, so what we're certainly seeing, and as I say, there's a number of indicators, is there was a significant surge of auction activity last weekend in Sydney, which gives us an immediate take on it. The busiest weekend since November, and the clearance rate actually increased to 74.5%. From the week before. So all the indications are that there is demand to take up any additional supply coming into spring, and that's going to continue for the short to medium term and exerting an upward pressure on prices. Yeah. But just worth noting, I mean, capital cities like Perth and Darwin, don't forget, are still experiencing falls in value, which has been their sort of long-term market trend for at least the last 4 or 5 years.
OK, Kevin, we've run out of time, but appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, Peter.